3 questions you need to ask about the internet. Number 2, being online. How exposed are you? Jo is walking in the park when she bumps into some guy she met at a party once. He asks her how her recent trip to France went and says he's really sorry to hear about her breakup with Sam. How does he know that? Of course, he's seen the pictures and posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, everywhere. But it still feels really weird. Almost everyone gives away huge amounts of data online. As well as Jo's posts on social media, there are also her usernames and email addresses when setting up accounts, her browsing history, her status updates, GPS locations, responses to marketing mail, her credit card transactions, and public records. All of this combined is known as Jo's data doppelganger. That's basically Jo in data form. This data doppelganger and the information it holds is of great interest to a lot of people for very different reasons. Mostly, it's used for marketing.
The web sucks to use. Let's say you one day are just curious about some shoes that you saw, so you go to the shoes website. For the next 2 months, you see ads for the shoe website everywhere, on every site you visit. Every little thing that you do gets stored and saved somewhere. That data is there, and it's a history of your thoughts.
Knowledge is power, and if you find that a handful of companies literally know everything about everybody on the internet, then that handful of companies have huge power to effectively determine the shape of future consumer markets, but also to shape opinion, to interfere with politics potentially.
Being able to shape public opinion and direct how people spend their money is huge, but there's another consequence to all of this information being stored.
They become a honeypot, if you like, for governments to say, I would like your data so I can know everything about the population too.
Jo knows this story pretty well. She's read about the whistleblower Edward Snowden, who leaked documents showing multiple governments were spying on people online, storing emails, phone calls, Skype conversations, browsing habits, and much, much more. This gives governments the ability to understand the population in unprecedented ways. But what's the harm in the government knowing so much about us? One of the first big data projects in Europe was built by IBM. The punch card system they developed was instrumental in aiding the Nazi regime to round up and eradicate groups of people they deemed to be a threat.
There are little boxes where all the information is to be punched in. We compare this information to the code sheet for concentration camps. And here you see Auschwitz is 1, Buchenwald 2, Dachau is 3. Now what kinds of prisoners were they? They could be a Jehovah's Witness for 2, a homosexual for 3, communist for 6, or a Jew would be 8. They would punch that number in, the material was tabulated, the machines were set. This was an enterprise so fast.
This was a very basic system created at a time when it was much more difficult to obtain personal information about people. So how does this relate to today? Well, while the Nazis aren't in power anymore, we do have governments around the world with very poor human rights records. So imagine what they could do with all of the information they can access today.
We know that everything we do, everything we like, everything we love, everything we buy, every breath you take, every move you make, they are watching us.
Jo has heard many people respond to concerns about this by saying, you've got nothing to fear if you've got nothing to hide. But shouldn't we be concerned that that phrase was made famous by Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels?
Just because you don't have anything to hide doesn't mean that you want everyone in the world to know everything that you do, and even if you don't mind them having access to it, maybe you'll mind someone having access to it later or being used against you later, and it's impossible to know.
But what can Jo do? Where would she need to go and what would she need to do to get some privacy?
They can spy on a lot of people because most of us don't create any barriers, right? We type our entire life into our iPhones, in Facebook and Google. We give it away actively without any protection. So just by doing a little bit, just by encrypting your emails and doing a few other things, you can already increase the cost of surveilling you from essentially nothing to hundreds of thousands of dollars per day, because now if they want to get that kind of information on you, they're going to have to do it the old way, physically following you around.
So using different messaging services that encrypt messages and browsers that don't track her activity can help protect Jo's privacy and mean she doesn't have to live in a cave? Even if they're not perfect, it all helps. There are also different operating systems like Subgraph and Tails that are putting privacy first. All of this helps Jo take control of her data and have a say in how the internet is developing. And she isn't the only one wanting to have her voice heard on this. There have been several global campaigns against increasing government surveillance powers, but not all have been successful. The UK Parliament recently passed the Investigatory Powers Bill. That gives security services increased legal powers despite sustained objection from some groups. This affects everyone, and it's important that people are aware how their data is being stored and how it's used to shape their actions, from what they're buying to who they're voting for. So is it even possible to have an internet free from surveillance and censorship? And how much of a say do we have in the future of the internet? Find out in part 3.
And ultimately, it's for your own good. It's for your own security.
Absolutely.
Because we know where you are, and therefore we can track you and protect you.
Yeah. We'll keep you safe from your living room. What is that?